The 23rd of January, Tuesday. -4 Celsius, sunny, clear weather.
János Pentelényi.
34-years-old engineer Buda, District 2, Bem Square, Radetzky Barracks. In the morning we went to the barracks, of course, in the midst of shelling. The barracks, quite shattered and with partially demolished stairwells, no longer offered enough security and had already been discovered by the Russians. We were moving to the huge, strong building of the county court on Foo Street. During an air raid, we also went there. There, the engineers were selected and promised special assignments. I was glad that perhaps I wouldn't have to dig with a shovel and a spade, but would get a job in my field. I met a lot of acquaintances in the basement of the courthouse whom I hadn't seen since the siege and who were also herded here by the Arrow Cross. An engineering group of 8 people, with a leader, was directed to the Toldy Street School. I was assigned here too. They said that we would also get food at Toldy and they would cook goulash daily from horses killed by mines. Despite the constant bombing, we somehow reached Toldy Real. The overcrowding and disorganization there were disappointing. We were instructed to go up to the castle and a high command in the rock cellar would decide on our further assignment. The royal castle was shelled from Pest and was constantly attacked by planes in low flights. In the greatest possible danger, we ran one by one, 20 meters apart, from house to house and around us. The small houses on the castle hill collapsed with a crackle. When we reached the castle, we were greeted by enormous destruction. Many German soldiers were taking refuge under the gates, and we were also herded into a house from which one of the entrances to the rock cellar opened. At the beginning of the cellar, we sat down to rest on the crates there, while our leaders went on, and the dark end of the tunnel-like cellar swallowed them up. We waited for a long time, they didn't come. Penetrating a little into the darkness, we saw some light. Behind a large curtain of national colors, a brightly lit room housed the Supreme Command. There was Major General Hellebrand, the former government commissioner of aircraft manufacturing, and his headquarters. The tunnel was full of police officers guarding large food supplies. Finally, our leader returned, and disappointedly, dejectedly, he informed us that we would be assigned as engineers to excavation and fortification work at Vermezeux, Margate Bridge, and Horthy Bridgehead. I had to report to Lukács Bath by 6 that evening, where the forced labourers from Radetzky and Foo Street would also be. Until then, I could go home. The journey home was as perilous as ever. The castle was under constant attack from Sturmoville dive bombers. We ran to Maria Square and took shelter in a house, waiting for an hour. The building shook, and the house next door took a direct hit. We couldn't stand it anymore and rushed out, only to see the planes returning. We found refuge in another house. After what felt like forever, we made it to Sena Square and parted ways with my companions. How could I cross the vast, open square without being machine-gunned from above? As another wave of planes approached, I dashed into a large corner house. I pressed myself against the wall in the stairwell when a bomb hit the courtyard side of the building. The wall creaked and crumbled, and dust filled the stairwell. I bolted out into the street, fearing the building might collapse further. As soon as I stepped outside, a nearby squadron opened fire, forcing me back under the doorway. In the next moment, a bomb, probably 50 kilos, landed among the German cars parked on the street. The blast blew the street door open, and debris rained down. Instinctively, I forced the door open with all my might and ran through the dusty air towards the corner of Retek Street. Another wave of attacks came. A small house next to me lay in ruins. I crouched at the base of a wall, motionless, waiting for the planes to pass. Running further down Retek Street, I took refuge in an abandoned inn. I saw the flash as the approaching Sturmoville squadron opened fire, and as I ducked into the doorway, a 20mm shell hit the wall and a piece fell at my feet. I continued to the shelter of a house on the corner of Filaire Street, where I stayed for an hour. There were many Hungarian soldiers in the basement, and the guards warned us that mines had been falling frequently in front of the entrance, making it extremely dangerous to go outside. Nevertheless, I decided to take my chances and managed to reach Olash Fasor, running from house to house. I finally arrived home around 4:30 in the afternoon. I had some pea soup and my children gathered around me. My wife had prepared some bread with jam for my journey. After an hour's rest, I set off for Lukács Bath. I ventured along Margit Krut, as it was already quite dark. On the corner of Keleti Karoli Street, a house was still burning from a previous explosion, and doors, window frames and furniture were scattered in a wide area. A house was also on fire in Lejos Street, and ammunition was exploding. I was stopped by an Arrow Cross guard at the Esplanade Hotel and taken inside for questioning. While they were checking my papers, a bomb hit the courtyard side. The floor swayed beneath us and plaster fell from the ceiling. When they finally let me go, I hurried to Lukács Bath but couldn't find the forced labourers. Eventually, I found two of my engineer colleagues in the darkness, and an SS soldier led us to the Danube bank. We were assigned to dig a trench between the tracks of the local railway. We also had to dig holes in the concrete sidewalk for machine gun nests. Mines were exploding around us, and at every whistle, we threw ourselves to the ground. The German soldier encouraged us, saying we shouldn't be afraid of the mines, but even he flinched and ducked his head when a mine whistled nearby. I was already dreading the work assigned to us for the next day. On the way home, one of the wings of the county court on Foo Street was on fire on the upper floors and ammunition was exploding. It was a terrifying sight in the dark night. I arrived home around 10 p.m. amid minor bombings.
Gyula Literati Lócz.
23-year-old First Lieutenant Margit Island. With 4 volunteer soldiers, we crammed into an armored vehicle sitting on 4 crates, 12 pieces, of fragmentation grenades. We had a cannon mounted on the vehicle. At 12 noon, we sped along the road running through the island, bursting through the completely surprised Russian lines, and made a sharp turn behind the water tower towards the medieval chapel. While my 4 soldiers dismounted the cannon and, with closed breechblocks, shot up the Soviet mortars and their crews stationed in the area of the former open-air stage, I provided cover with my submachine gun, and Sergeant Hahn turned the vehicle around. The whole thing didn't take more than 2-3 minutes. We fired all 12 grenades, and before the Russians could recover, we had already remounted and sped back along the same road we had come. On the way, we threw grenades right and left so that the Soviet heavy machine guns on the roadside couldn't open fire. And because everything went so smoothly and it gave us bloodlust, we repeated the operation at 3 p.m. This time, without a cannon, 6 of us, armed with submachine guns and hand grenades, continuously fired from the open-top car as we drove into the square in front of the Grand Hotel, shooting the Russians there, then turned around without stopping and pulled back. We had no losses.